All right. This so far has just been a phenomenal presentation, and it's. I'm so delighted at the speakers that we've had, and I'm very happy that I get to talk as well. I'm going to be talking about diabetic retinopathy. We've already seen one talk on that. We have two more coming up. Um, and that's a testament to the scale, to the importance of the disease. A lot of people have diabetes. So I'm going to go about my talk a certain way. Show of hands, how many people in the room are not physicians? That's half the room. Perfect. That was what I anticipated. And so let's talk about diabetes. We have some sense of what it is, perhaps. Maybe some people have diabetes and have lived with it all your life, and so you have a different perspective, perhaps, or a unique perspective, and this could speak to where you are. So it's a disease that affects a lot of people, 10% of Americans. That's approximately 33 million people. It causes about 1.6 million deaths around the world, globally. So it's a big epidemiological problem. And there are multiple complications that come out of the disease, from amputations to kidney disease to blindness to heart attacks and strokes at early age, et cetera. And so how is it that one disease can cause so many different problems in so many parts of the body? It's because there's something going on that's wrong that affects, wherever blood vessels go, diabetes goes, in effect. And so there are two types. We've heard of type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes, right? And basically in type 1 diabetes, there's a problem with the organ that supplies insulin. And what insulin does is it binds to certain receptors and cells, opens up those receptors like a gate, and then all the glucose that we eat can then go into the cell and serve as fuel. So to the contrary of what one might expect, it turns out that people with diabetes actually are starving, in effect, because the glucose is not getting to where it needs to be. Instead, it's floating around in the blood, clogging it up, causing problems, and the oxygen is not able to get to where it's needed. And so it's basically a problem of not getting enough nutrients and oxygen to where it's needed. That's type 1 diabetes. In the case of type 2 diabetes, you have the insulin, it's just that the gate's not working. That key doesn't work. You turn it, and nothing happens. And that's how this disease is able to cause problems everywhere, and the problems are most prominent in parts of the body where you really need the oxygen, or to begin with, there was not enough blood flow to that place from the start. So those parts of the body are typically vulnerable, like extremities, your limbs, your arms, and the eyes, for instance. So that's a person with a sore. People often would end up with below-the-knee amputations. It's a very bad disease, and a lot of us in the room are ophthalmologists, and so our perspective of this is from the standpoint typically of diabetic retinopathy or neovascular glaucoma, which are the problems that it causes. And in effect, a lot of the problems come because there's not enough oxygen, there's not enough nutrients, and they're exacerbated because the body tries to fix the problem. It says, well, there's not enough oxygen here, there's not enough blood, why don't I grow a bunch of blood vessels in a hurry without planning or thinking, and those blood vessels break, they burst, they form scar tissue, and they pull off retinas, and they cause all sorts of problems. And so it's a very bad disease. This here's an example, a picture of a retina, right? We've already seen this in Dale Webster's talk earlier, and that's the optic nerve. That's the cable that goes right to the brain. These are the blood vessels here. And here you've got normal retina compared to diabetic retina. So when those blood vessels the blood's not getting to where it needs to, the oxygen is not, you start to have all sorts of problems. Clogged blood vessels leak, they break, they bleed, the body tries to respond, tries to fix the problem. It doesn't start in the worst stage. It starts very mild, and that's called, as the name implies, mild non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy. You'll get these little broken blood vessels here or there that'll come out, and then over time, the disease starts to get worse, and the body tries to fix the problem, but that causes more problems because you see all these blood vessels here, they're not meant to be there. That's called neovascularization, and it's proliferative in that case, diabetic retinopathy, bad problem. Those blood vessels break, they bleed, and people go blind. right? And so that's basically the story, and this is from the eye perspective, but it's essentially the same thing that happens. The end stage of diabetic retinopathy is tractional retinal detachments, tractional rhegmatogenous combined. And when this thing is left to go on its uncontrolled, it inevitably leads to blindness, pretty much. At the earlier phase, one feature of the disease that's very important is called macular edema. People get swelling, again, from that adaptive response where the body's trying to fix something. So the blood vessels are not working well. They just try to pour out the serum, if you will, into the tissue. And that is prime real estate, which gets compromised and causes people's vision to go down and become blurry. We've heard this. We heard this during Dr. Dornbos's talk. We heard it during Dr. Webster's. We've heard it during everybody's talk, essentially. Early detection is key. We heard it during Dr. Goodwin's talk, basically screening. Everybody agrees that that's what's most important. However, there is a problem. Houston, we have a problem. We do not have enough doctors. I live in Houston, so we don't have enough doctors in the United States. We have 172,000 physician shortfall by 2030. Earlier, people used to say, oh, the shortage is in primary care and so on, and somehow that just didn't ring right with me. And indeed, new research is showing that the majority of the help that we need and the shortfall that we have is actually with specialists. So how long does it take to train a physician? It takes a long time, right? So, so there's no answer there. We have to find another way to do this. For one, I practiced, now I'm on the faculty at MD Anderson. I should put that on my opening slide. But I practiced at Iowa, Dubuque. I went into private practice, and I worked 3 days out of the week. The other 2 days, I was doing my research. And I was the only retina specialist who lived within 40 miles of the corner of Wisconsin, Illinois, and Iowa. And Dr. Abramoff lived an hour and a half away in in Iowa City. And if you go north, you get to Madison, another hour and a half, So I was there, and this is a lot of what I did. It turns out we actually have treatments, for these diseases. You have to catch it early. And one treatment that has been just a massive game changer. It's fairly new. New meaning 15 years, thereabouts ago. It was discovered that a class of drug called anti-vascular endothelial growth factors can treat things like diabetic retinopathy, can treat things like macular degeneration, and basically solve the problem. Now we're even starting to find more uses for this drug. It turns out that we're using these things to treat now, based on the protocol S of the DRCR-NET, even proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Still a lot of open questions regarding what's the endpoint, and people are still trying to figure that out. I find that there's a problem with just giving people shots, indefinitely. However, you do see a regression of the state of the disease, absolutely. Somebody even with fairly uncontrolled blood sugar, you can find a regression, and they can go from proliferative to moderate to mild, almost to normal. But there's always a cost. Nothing's free. We used to do those and still do PRPs, which cause visual field deficits and constricted visual fields. There's no free lunch, okay? So that's a story for another day. So basically, we do have treatments that we're able to do, and here I am about to do an intravitreal injection in a patient who has, this condition, and it was suffering from, macular edema, and had some, bleeding in their eye, say, for example. There are other uses for this treatment, such as macular degeneration, which was a lot of what I saw in Dubuque, and it was likely what this patient had. So there you go. You see there's 3.5 millimeters from the limbus, and you put the needle in, and then you inject, 0.05 mLs, and I would do this 50 times a day, running from room to room. So we know how to treat these things, but then I realized that, detection is the issue. There's not enough doctors. I have a training in computer science and engineering, and so I went ahead and started a company, and we started to use these convolutional neural networks. The whole idea is you can train a computer to look at a picture and tell you what's in that picture, just as well as you or I can, basically. However, we had another objective in mind, which was we wanted to be able to do this in a way that was cost-effective and that was affordable, was easy to use, and was going to be available to everybody anywhere in the world. That's kind of how I started out. You know, I was born in Nigeria, I grew up in Nigeria, and I've actually taken 3 trips there this year. I went in January with data science. I'm on the advisory board of Data Science Nigeria, and I'm going to be addressing the Ophthalmological Society of Nigeria in September, where I'm going to be kickstarting a AI national screening program for them. Over there. So it's very exciting. So that's part of my thinking, you know, part of my orientation. So earlier I said we're all kind of talking about diabetic retinopathy, right? But there's always a different angle. You'll hear Dr. Abraham's talk is different from Google's talk. It's going to be different from Anusa Trivedi of Microsoft's talk. It's different from mine. And it's just amazing that we're all in the same room. This is the most expert panel that has ever gathered to talk about artificial intelligence in diabetic retinopathy. So basically, I'm going to show you what we built. And when I left Iowa, I started writing computer code. So I left clinical practice. I did not have money. I have 2 young kids, 2 years old. Joy just turned 2. Daniel had 4-year-old birthday yesterday. I Skyped with him, and so here I was with no job and no income, $0, and they can eat. They can drink milk. So I started coding like this, furiously, and so I built the world's first mobile AI app for eye care providers single-handedly, and got phone calls that week from some of the top pharmaceutical companies you can think of and big tech companies say, how did you do this? What's the size of your engineering team? Are you FDA approved? Who the heck are you? It was sort of validation that, there's something going on here. This is exciting. So here's what we built. Now we have a team. We've raised some funds, and we have a very good engineering team that I'm proud of. And we're getting some really fantastic opportunities to continue to do this work. Here's the app built over a year ago. It was so cutting edge. This was more than a year ago. An app that you take the phone, point it at the screen, take a picture of the screen, that goes into the cloud and gives you an answer and tells you whether there's exudation or not. Of course, we have the same infrastructure. We've built it up now. We've tightened it up. This is available for download on Google and on the Play Store. And basically, the idea is inference. You train the network on a set of data, and then you're able to then connect. And because the world is such a connected place, and the problems also, this problem is not unique to OCTs or fundus photographs or diabetic retinopathy or whatever. In fact, we're about to roll out a device here now with, I would say, I'm not going to say the details, but a ton of retinal diseases that we're able to classify with astounding accuracy. And some of those projects have such big potential for impact globally that it's super exciting. It's such great validation that I walked away from my job. It turned out that I ended up doing a locums opportunity this summer. I went over to the Appalachian Mountains and in West Virginia, and I saw, the first week back, I saw 180 patients, retina patients. And so to some degree, it's kind of like riding a bicycle. As long as you're serious about it and you're taking a thoughtful approach to your patient and good patient care and you're reading, you can actually take breaks from practice and go right back into it and be doing procedures with great results and with everybody happy. The patients are happy and your colleagues are happy. So that's been a good opportunity. Medicine is quite a flexible thing, ophthalmology is. It allows you to do so many different things. The world is a connected place. There's internet everywhere. And these cell phones, like this small, that's Android, and maybe it costs $10, and people have that. So we have a great team, Hossein Godsi, Goodness Duru, I should have put on here as well, Lamido Yadina. These are some fascinating engineers. I'm thankful to my wife, my kids, I'm thankful to God, and also to Google. Because we're using some of their infrastructure, and we've been given, basically I have as much compute power as I need to do whatever we want. And that's something we're very thankful for also. So yeah, that's my talk in a nutshell. I'll take 1 or 2 questions, and then we'll carry on with the program.
Again, I just wanted to commend Dr. Odaibo for putting together this panel. This is one of the best symposiums we had this entire meeting. And,
Thank you.
Technology is something that we should not be afraid of. We know that ophthalmologists in general is a quickly evolving profession. So to see all the ways that we haven't even considered that what we need to do in the future is amazing. But how are you going to get this to the masses? Are you going to just create an app that you can download, or is it going to be pay for service, or a yearly commission?
That's a great question. You know, the business models for artificial intelligence in healthcare, as well as for telemedicine, are things that are evolving. And you mentioned some of the patterns that it seems like there's some convergence on at this point. Appears to be subscription-based models, pay-per-click, where there's some sharing of revenue between software developers and hardware providers like camera device manufacturers. One thing that we care a lot about, obviously we're a company, so we have to stay viable, but we care about making things affordable and available to as many people as possible. And so it's something that I'm excited about. Had dinner with Dr. Abramoff last night, and it's just amazing to hear, because Dr. Abramoff is a pioneer in a lot of the change that's going on in the healthcare landscape in terms of delivery. There's now CMS code, for instance, where it's billable. AI is now billable. So those types of things are truly changing the landscape. And an AI, apparently now, I don't want to steal his thunder too much, but needs malpractice insurance, just like your doctor does, because these are autonomous systems that we're building. So it's very, very exciting.
Hi, I just had a question about, you talked about your coding, developing your AI algorithms.
Yes.
So what about the data? Where did you get the data from to both train the networks and also to validate it?
Great question. So one thing I say is that, data is, that's the last, thank you, that's the last question. Data is everywhere. It's sort of like oil. Oil is everywhere. And what's difficult to find, what's expensive in the general sense, in the sense of what's hard to come by, are the skills and the expertise, the know-how about where do you go to get that data and what do you do with that data? How do you extract it? That's called domain-specific knowledge, right? So we have partners, data partners all over the world. My emails blow it up. And for instance, I'm getting on that plane to Nigeria to address the entire body of ophthalmologists there, and they want to work with us, to set up a diabetic retinopathy screening program. So we have multiple sources from universities to entire countries, national systems.